What is up, everybody? Happy Friday to you. We made it. We made it. Uh, this has been one of those weeks where I have been just trying to center on God and organize, get myself and my kids ready for the back to school hustle, and just leave everything in God's hands. And I'm really trying to practice doing that. So when sometimes I'm like, God, what, like a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, God, what should I do? He's like, I keep hearing in my brain, organize your house. So I'm like, yeah, I could do this. I've been meaning to do this. So I'm centered on just moving with the spirit, if you will. And I think, as we live in these trying times, those who truly do believe in the sword or God's word, that's what you are practicing more and more doing is moving with the spirit and moving with God's spirit. And the only way you move with God's spirit is if you have a thorough understanding of God's word. And sorry, my eyes be wandering from this screen to that screen. But if you have a thorough understanding of God's word, and that is not easy in Satan's manipulative world. And I've said this before, Satan understands the word, he understands the prophecies way better than we do. Okay. And so that affords him and the other fallen angels an opportunity to manipulate them in so many different ways. And I say that to say that, people come from different points of view, and I always look at the history of people, right? And so there are sometimes, and I've said this before, I can, get with the point of anybody if it's reasonable. Even a KKK member can make a reasonable point, but off of that, I reviewed a video yesterday from a channel called Tabitha Speaks Politics, and she was kind of going on this, sort of emotional rant about, Candace Owens and her recent interview with the Tate brothers, Tristan and Andrew Tate. And yesterday I didn't see this interview trending, but obviously today on X I do see it trending, and I'm seeing the clips that she's talking about. So I'm like, great, because I am not going to prioritize looking at any of this stuff unless I just feel like it. So I didn't do it yesterday. I mean, I caught clips of the Trump and Elon interview yesterday, and that was just boring as all hell. And I just got different vibes from that interview. So that was just a dismiss for me. It's not even worth me doing any content on that interview. Just boring, 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 boring. But off of that, I'm looking at Ian Miles Cheong, and he is posting on X saying Candace Owens says the Jews worship Baphomet and they practice pedophilia as part of their religion. What a complete fall from grace. So let's see what Candace and Tristan.
They are essentially, and this is Sigmund Freud was a Kabbalist, and they believe in bisexuality. They worship Baphomet. They are trying to use psychology to introduce, and I read this in a book by a Jewish historian, David Bacon, to make their religion the religion of the world, yes. Right? Which is a pedophile-centric religion that believes in demons, it believes in child sacrifice, and it is the reason that we have the circumstances that we are in today, and most people won't be able to find this history. And
she's, and I don't know who this they is, right? This guy is saying that she's talking about Jews in general. And so I think that number one, it is really important for people to understand that there are different sects, SECTS, of Judaism and even that belief system. There are, Talmudic Jews. There are more Torah Jews, or, Jews more aligned with the Abrahamic faith and covenants, right? And so when you are speaking about Jews, I think that just like I say this about Black people, it applies to them too. You have to be specific. You have to be specific, because when you start blanketing any group of people, it is very harmful for them. And I can speak about that as a Black American. And I've said this before: when you spout repetitive rhetoric about any given group in general, right? It is very harmful. It is very demeaning, right? So it's easy for us in our language, our lazy language, our inflammatory inclined language and speech today, to not really go back to the fundamentals of rhetoric and understand that words do matter and word choice matter, right? And word choice really boils down to saying, some of them, or a segment of them, right? And when you say things like that, right, it adds that sort of, instance where it may not be true of all of them or everyone you meet. So this gives that person, the receiver, the grace of being able to have their own experiential experience. And people make conclusions based off of pattern observations and experiences of people from any given group. So to give you an example, if you got a white man and every time he's encountered a Black person, it's been a negative encounter, that man's not going to have very positive things to say about Black people, because reoccurringly his pattern of experience is negative. But if he runs into a good Black man who doesn't give him a negative experience, then that starts to plant the seed that maybe not every single one, just maybe the ones that he's dealt with, or the types, right? The archetype of the person, right, was just not aligned, right? And I say this to say that, you have to be careful when you're talking about any group of people, right? When you say they, right? Who are they, right? Is it a certain segment of the Jewish community, or is this a generalized belief that Candace Owens has, right? And and then where are the foundations? And I will say that, pedophilia, like racism, isn't racist. And, you will find pedophiles across racial and religious groups, unfortunately, right? Because it's beyond a religious thing for some of these people. Some of these people are victims of it. And some of these people, have been brought up in cults and ideals where it's normalized. And this is both on, this is beyond Judaism at that point, right? Because there's a lot of satanic infiltration of a lot of religions worldwide. So I do think that Candace should be cautious when she's spouting this rhetoric, because again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and the manner in which you say it, and the patterns of how you've been saying things. She's obviously has a vendetta against, individuals in the Jewish community, and she, really has no problem, focusing her attention, on them, because, she can go into Black people all day and then but that would just hurt her. So it's like, no, let me just talk about the Jews, because they leverage me to talk about, some of them leverage me to talk, see what I did there? Some of them, because not all of the Jews empowered Candace Owens. Some of them didn't know who she was. Some of them just outright did not agree with her position, right? But some of the Jews decided to empower her, right? And she learned their tactics, right? And now she is using their tactics against them in every way that she can. And she can do that because she has the audience. Now, am I saying that what Candace Owens is saying is incorrect or not true? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because there is a segment of that community that do engage in those types of practices. And we have to be honest about that. So far, I do not see anything just really awful outside of the manner and the articulation of what she's saying. I mean, and she's using the Tate brothers, right? Because they buy into that chauvinistic demon. She's using the Tate brothers because the Tate brothers buy into the chauvinism demon, right? And I think that they're religious chameleons as well, right? And I've actually seen people in the Islamic community call them out on being possible religious chameleons. And I think she takes notes from what works for other grifters, right? So she's gonna just be on what Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate and Candace Owens, they're actually a very interesting alliance because, again, you have three attractive people who can articulate, who can manipulate. I wouldn't necessarily say that all of them have, attractive charisma, right? I think if I were, I don't know. I don't really see a lot of personality that I would want to kick it with when it comes to a Candace Owens for a variety of different reasons. And it has nothing to do with her not being Black enough because, again, I don't buy into constructs of Blackness. And I think that people should be organically themselves. That's not a character, a person that I would want to just hang out with on, a lake and just talk crap about everything. That's just not that type of person I'd be down with, right? And even Andrew Tate, he would get on my nerves probably in the first 10 minutes. So these are not people that I would want to hang out with on a normal day, but these are beta people who have learned how to empower themselves, using, the most important social values, right? Being attractive, being intelligent. Like, here's the thing that people don't understand about a Candace Owens and an Andrew Tate is they're not hard on the eyes. They're intelligent, right? They have a platform, so you can say that they've created things. They are running on high value without even having money. Money is an addition to those types of people's values. That is organic value, from the standpoint of these beta people figured out how to play into the mindsets of people who are significantly more ignorant than they are, And that's really the power of the grift is you find the weaklings in society and you just talk on all the things that they're passionate about. But off that, I did entertain some of these clips, and I think that some people are infuriated. This guy says, Candace Owens and Tristan Tate proved that people who have degrees, studies, and, here's the thing about this data. Like, let me see I truly believe that Candace Owens leeches off of my content because I am a
It's funny
one-off
because in
content
talking about
creator.
that cult of science too, I was reading C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man,
Yeah.
and he starts talking about
And
this
she could,
idea
like,
of like
I could be
an ape in
amused for her to
trousers.
go
This is what we're
out and
creating right
find
outside.
somebody else to
They're
research
convinced
so
they're
that she don't
intelligent.
give
They're
a
the
black
dumbest
woman
people you could
credit
ever
for
speak to
leeching
because
yeah.
they're getting
off of a black
degrees and they're
woman.
being inoculated with propaganda, and they trust the science so much that if the science told them not to eat food, they'd all die of starvation,
Yes.
right? Because like, oh, look, a scientist, he went to school, he knows that I shouldn't be eating food at all anymore, and they would all die. There's no gut or God instinct, as I like to call it. There's no God instinct anymore because they have just been purposefully polluting people. But I think about that now when I see these people speaking about their data and where they got their degrees from. I'm like, you are an ape.
Oh, the studies. Andrew mentions this.
show.
Oh, the studies show. The studies. My father used to say you could buy an education, but you can't buy intellect. My brother and I we left school when we were 15 years old. That's it. We're self-made multimillionaires. So, and I now have lots of people who work for me who have university degrees. However, I'm sick of people waving these pieces of paper around thinking they're somehow better than me. I don't care about your piece of paper that says you're $100,000 in debt. And I don't care how much you trust the studies. I don't care how much you trust the data. Did you collect it yourself? Did you collect it with me? No? Then I don't give a shit. It's very, very simple because the studies show the vaccine is safe and effective and everyone's fine. My mother quite literally had a heart attack in a year and a half ago. 7-8 months ago. And I blame the COVID vaccine. She's a healthy woman. She exercises 9
Okay, I'm not going to go into that. But it's interesting because 10 days ago, not even 10 days ago, I was doing a live stream. And again, I'm a smaller content creator, so it's easy for people to leech off of my talking points and share my talking points and say, hey, let's recycle this talking point as ours and be the authority of thought. Meanwhile, narrating all black people as ignorant.
But, she went to this school, she went there.
This is me 10 days ago.
You can spend 8 years at a college university listening to some professor tell you how to think, achieve a depreciating piece of paper called a degree, right? And you can still be dumber than a sack of diapers. Because if you really lack core reasoning skills and being able to look at patterns of logic and take patterns of information and actually apply logic and knowledge, right? I don't care how many degrees you have. You are not a person that has higher consciousness and intelligence, right? And it has nothing to do with your race or anything like that. It just has something to do with you.
So this was a point that I was making not even 10 days ago, but I make this point actually reoccurringly about people running around, thinking that they have authority and credibility because they sat in a classroom and heard somebody else tell them basically what to think and how to think. And if they ever tried to challenge that person telling them what to think and how to think, they essentially will not do well in those institutions. I think that I probably would have did much better in college if I didn't have professors who wanted to indoctrinate me with idealisms that just did not resonate with me and just did not they were contradictory to the things that I observed in life, right? And that's the really important message about, this conversation, because I think these conversations are important. I don't like Candace Owens for which she has perpetuated about the Black community and been a part of, right? But like I said, I can even agree with a racist, right? If they're talking on a valid, observable talking point. And some of the things that she is talking about in these discussions with the Tate brothers are absolutely true. I mean, they're absolutely true. You see the lemming culture of people today, and they, look at these people who went into a classroom paid to hear somebody else tell them how to think and reason. And I've always said the best classroom is always the school of hard knocks of life. Just going out there, living life, working, failing, succeeding, failing more than you succeed, understanding people, understanding that everybody on this earth is a textbook situation to somebody else if you're paying attention. if you're paying attention. And, Candace mentioned something about having a, sort of God sort of mindset. I mean, when you are a person of God, you are running on a higher consciousness. That is your blessing in Satan's world. That while everybody else is a lemming, right, you are running on higher consciousness that you have gotten from the Word of God, which is sharper than any two-edged sword, right? And this is why it is so important for people to understand the Bible, understand the principles in the Bible, understand the prophecies in the Bible, and understand the laws and covenants. Because if you really did, you would be like, why is anybody anti-Bible? You got to be an evil, sadistic person in your mindset to really be against the Bible, because there's just fundamental principles in the Bible that just makes sense, right? And even down to worship, right? We look at what happened to the ancient Israelites, right? They were A-okay when they were in covenant with their God. They were conquering other nations, no problem. But the minute they fell out of covenant with their God, and we knew what point that was, because he allowed other nations to move on them. He allowed other nations to disrupt their peace and subdue them, right? People can narrate history all they want to, and I do agree with many of the things that Candace is bringing out, right? And if you just go through my content on Twitter and on YouTube, I feel like I'm an inspiration. I feel like I'm a muse to a lot of these bigger content creators, because again, some of them are not naturally creative. They have to leech off the content of other people in order to, even have some type of sustainability to keep people interested in their content. So, I see what Candace Owens is delivering in a couple of ways. I feel like there's a number of motives with Candace and this interview with Tristan Tate, but there could be some flesh of good in there where she really is trying to be informative, right? But I like to understand really her overall goal in centering her content, specific, in the manner that she's centering it on the Jewish people, right? And, because it's one thing when, you're making a point, in reaction to something that is happening in society right now. But it's another point when and I think maybe her motivation is see how these types of people have been manipulating America, for, decades, and this is why this country is the way that it is. And, being on a Trump train, people are talking about we need to take our country back, take our country back, take our country back. This is pretty much, and I've been saying this since 2020, this is pretty much how the Nazi Party really rose in Germany, possibly, right? Where, and why, and this could have been really the catalyst, this type of rhetoric, this type of fervor, this type of concentration, could be the reason why Jewish people have been kicked out of, I think one person said, over 109 countries, right? And this is why they felt like it was necessary to establish the state of Israel, so that, if any nation decided to exile them, they will have a centralized place for them to come and gather and be free of, any type of persecution from any other nation, right? And I have seen calls on Twitter from different people in the Jewish populations for Jewish people to go, return home to Israel. But, I mean, to tell an American Jewish person that, to me, is like telling a black person to go back to Africa, right? That's not their home. Israel is not their home. Many of them are very removed from the culture, and even if they do their little pilgrimage, right, many of them are still removed from that culture. Even if I go visit Africa for a month, next month, and I come back to America, it's still not my culture. It's not my culture. And so, I think that, there's a lot of reasons why people want to stay in the homes that they've probably been established in for generations. And, it's the same mindset with the Palestinians as well. So, what a dilemma we are in Satan's world. Because this is Satan's world, and people, God is in control of his people and what happens to them. But what happens in these satanic nations is all on the fallen angels, Satan, their leader, and all of the humans that follow them and submit to their spirit in very colorful ways. But anyways, I am going to say that the only threatening thing that I saw of that interview, or of those clips of the interview with the Tate brothers from Candace Owens, is the articulation, the generalization. You cannot generalize groups. You have to be specific about the segment that you are speaking with. So even if you don't want to go into all, statistical data points or anything like that, you still have to have enough pattern information to be specific about which group that you're talking about, right? Because it's like a lot of times people will say sexy red, right? They'll look at a sexy red and they'll conflate a woman like that, a young woman like that, to all of Black people and all of Black women. And a lot of Black women, even if Black women can bop to her music, we don't want to be sexy red. We don't want to be disgraced. I think we all have a little, inner vixen in us, But there's a time, place, and manner for that. You can go into, it's like that tweet song, oops, there goes my shirt all over my, what is it? Oh my. And she's in front of her mirror by herself in the comfort of her own home, not sexualizing herself in public, and she's doing her sexy dance in front of the mirror. All right? Nothing wrong with that. You want to buy, there's some bots of Sexy Red in private, closed doors. I may be doing some bopping, but I don't listen to Sexy Red like that, though. I don't get up and I need to listen to Sexy Red. No, it's really just a mood. Like, most people aren't waking up listening to Sexy Red, if they're intelligent and got things going on, but a lot of people can concede that somebody like Sexy Red can put on a bot that they can move to, right? And so I think there's layers to these conversations and these personifications, but I'm almost at 30 minutes. I should have just made this a live stream. But you guys have a wonderful day. I will catch you on the next one. And happy Sabbath to those of you who observe. Bye.